please welcome Matt Vasko.
Thank you. You know, when I was a kid, my mom used to say the same thing whenever I said I hated anything. She would say simply, "Don't hate." I could say I hated broccoli, and she'd say, "Don't hate." I could come home from school and tell her about how some boy on the playground gave me a tough time during recess and how I just hated him. And she would say, "Don't hate." Finally, one day when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I said to her, "Mom, you're always telling me don't hate. What's so terrible about hate?" She said, "Well, hate is a strong word." I said, "I have strong feelings." She said, "I just don't like that on you. You're a very loving young boy. I just want to see you be loving and not hating." And it really kind of took me a long time to completely understand what my mom was warning me against that day. She was trying to warn me against the kinds of things we can be capable of as human beings when hate gets locked in our hearts. Things like violence, murder, racism, bigotry, and even genocide. Also, she was helping to shape me into a loving and caring adult who could navigate a complex, diverse, and often unkind world. She wanted me to be able to face hardships and realities without hardening my heart. At least that's the conclusion I reached for myself. I recently went back to my mom and talked to her about how she always used to tell me, "Don't hate." And she said, "Oh, did I say that? Oh, good." Now in her 70s, she just turned 75 this year, she remains a kind, loving, caring, and compassionate person. We see hatred's results on display every day on the news. Hatred has become so disturbingly commonplace that some experts are even warning against what they call hate culture. Think of that. Hatred as a cultural force. I won't waste time today listing all of hate's modern manifestations and pitfalls. It's like what Supreme Justice Potter Stewart said about pornography. We know it when we see it. From internet trolls to gun violence to discriminatory laws. Hate, it seems, is everywhere. When I started what has become the It Matters How We Treat One Another Facebook page 8 years ago, I did it largely as a response to hatred I saw spreading online and in society. The tipping point came when my workplace at the time, a school and church in Pasadena, was leafleted with hate-filled flyers from a white supremacist website. Researching the website, I was surprised by how well organized it was and how it targeted young people by making hate look fun. I thought, if hate is organizing, then I want to organize on the side of love. I want to speak out against this. That became the impetus for what is now the social media platform and podcast, It Matters How We Treat One Another. So, this talk is about countering hate, specifically hate born from intolerance, prejudice, and bigotry. My goal is to encourage people to join me in this work. We can all counter hate in big and small ways, online and in real life. I will equip you with well-researched and practiced ideas for countering hatred and intolerance in loving ways, and for spreading love and acceptance. Hopefully, you'll feel inspired to speak up and take action. Now, I always encourage folks to counter hate in a loving way. And this approach actually grew out of a comment that I was seeing on the It Matters How We Treat One Another Facebook page. Sometimes a positive post I would share about a targeted group would garner a hate-filled comment from someone who saw the post and didn't like or agree with it. Next, someone who was well-meaning would respond to the hate-filled comment with contempt. Then things would get interesting, because the hater would reply with some version of, "See, you're no better than I am. I hate them and you hate me." It was as if they thought everyone hates. And I noticed again and again that the person who was standing up for someone with the targeted identity had accidentally affirmed the hater by returning hate with a hate-filled comment. That led me to research effective strategies for countering hate, because that wasn't working. My digging uncovered that maintaining a loving attitude was incredibly effective, especially in the long run, and especially with people we care about. If the people who were making an effort to counter hate on my page would have reached out with love, then the hate-filled person would not have been able to say, "You're no better than I am." In a way, they would have actually been better, because, after all, love, I think most of us can agree, is better than hate. Love builds, hate destroys. I tend to think that it's normal not to hate anyone. People comment all the time on my page that they too were raised not to hate. I've never been a person to think that everybody hates somebody, for the simple reason that others were raised similarly to me. Hate-filled people might assume that the people they hate also hate them. I've heard that argument before. But that's just not the way the world works. The truth is that the people they hate probably don't even think about them. And if they do, they might feel nothing but pity for them. Because identity-based hate in this day and age just seems so ignorant that people tend to ignore it or write it off. Some people make such a practice of love that they love everyone, even the people who hate them. I call to mind the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "I've decided to stick with love because hate is too great a burden to bear." In fact, there's evidence to show that hatred is bad for the hater. I've heard it said that hate is like an acid that eats away at the container that holds it. The Buddha said that having a heart filled with hatred was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. When we move to counter hate, we need to shift from that mindset of contempt that comes so naturally to curiosity. We must get curious. We are all made up of the learning and experiences we've had in our lifetimes. We are not born hating. Something happened to that hate-filled person along the way to make them the way they are. In their book, Motivational Interviewing, Helping People Change and Grow, authors William R. Miller and Stephen Rolnick prescribe approaching people with empathy and compassion. They say telling and persuading are often insufficient and can even have the opposite result from what you intended, because people naturally get defensive, and it's impossible to change anyone's mind when they're feeling defensive. But when people are experiencing acceptance, believe it or not, they are more likely to be open to change, and change becomes possible. So, start with acceptance. You have to accept that people are the way they are. But how did they get this way? That's where the curiosity comes in. Take the case of Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is a black blues musician who began befriending members of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1980s. Rather than hold contempt for these men, which he easily could have done, Daryl got curious. One day, one person at a time, he would present his new friends with the simple yet powerful question, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? Then he took the time to really listen to the answers he received. Through the simple act of empathetic listening, Daryl has been able to eventually, over the course of the years from the 1980s to now, to actually move over 200 white men away from the KKK. We've probably all been in conversations where we felt the need to speak up in opposition of someone with a hate-filled attitude. Rather than make them defensive, try to think up what are called open questions that will get them self-reflective. Something like, how did you come to feel this way? Or maybe, what makes you take that perspective? The reason you want to ask open questions is to get them sharing something thoughtful about themselves. When people become self-reflective, it opens up the opportunity for change. It is important to note that we can't change other people, right? They can only change themselves. But we can, using open questions and getting people self-reflective, we can effectively plant the seeds of change. Make it a conversation. We as a country need to have more conversations across political and philosophical lines. I just read an article this week that it works. Really listen to people, listen to their answers. Listening is so close to loving that many people can't tell the difference. Maybe listening is a form of loving people. Listen for what Miller and Rolnick call change talk. In change talk, people hear themselves argue for change. Let's suppose over Thanksgiving dinner, your cousin says something derogatory about people you care about, and you ask, how did you come to feel this way? Listen for when your cousin says something that indicates that they might be willing to soften their view or change their perspective. Then you just want to sort of pull at that thread. Ask another open question, or ask them to continue down the change path, or take a moment to counter hateful misinformation with facts. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and facts are the best way to counter misinformation. Let's take a look at a few other things you can do to counter hate in a loving way. The basic rule we're looking at here is to react. That's the first thing you want to do. Do not remain silent. Silence implies agreement. You have to speak up to let the hateful or intolerant person know that they're wrong and you do not agree with them. Remain calm and logically state your case. It helps me to remain calm if I change my mindset so that maybe the person isn't ill-intentioned, but they're simply misinformed or repeating something they heard somewhere else. When it comes to speaking up, former extremist Megan Phelps Roper, you might recognize that name, Phelps, offers invaluable guidance. Megan grew up in the Westboro Baptist Church. and was taught that life was an epic battle between good and evil. And she said, the good was my church and its members, and the evil was everyone else. The church has been known to picket throughout the United States with hateful signs and chants. In her 20s, Megan brought that hateful message to Twitter, now X. Over time, opponents, including the man who would later become her husband, used 4 strategies that Megan credits with causing her to abandon hateful messages and leave the Westboro Baptist Church forever. Those strategies are: 1, don't assume bad intent. Instead, assume that they think they're the good guy, because they probably do. Megan did. 2, ask questions. Take genuine interest, right, in the other person's position. Learn how they acquired their beliefs. They will feel heard, and we need to hear one another. 3, as I mentioned, stay calm. Staying calm prevents the conversation from escalating to an explosive end. After all, if you get somebody to blow up in an argument, that means you win, right? Then you can use the buffer of time and distance online, if you're in a debate, to help yourself stay calm. Finally, make the argument. Don't assume that your case is obvious, right? It might feel that way to you, but it's probably not to them. So you have to actually state your case. Megan explained it this way. She said, we're all the product of our upbringing, and our beliefs reflect our experiences. We can't expect others to spontaneously change their own mind. If we want change, we have to make a case for it. My friends on Twitter didn't abandon their beliefs and their principles, only their scorn. They channeled their infinitely justifiable offense and came to me with pointed questions, tempered with kindness and humor. They approached me as a human being, and that was more transformative than 2 full decades of outrage, disdain, and violence. Next, share positive stories online. Counter hate where you see it with love. Counter hate speech with love speech. They say that's the best remedy for hate speech. Love speech, more speech. Share positive stories about targeted groups and cultures other than your own. Positivity is very likable. And that's something that one of my guests on my podcast brought up. Professor Matthew Koshman from the University of Colorado Boulder, who teaches classes on persuasion, was talking about trying to be your most persuasive self. And he says that we're more likely to be successful in having someone come around to our way of thinking if they find us, our ideas, or both likable. Maybe that's why salespeople tend to be so charismatic, right? If you want people to buy what you're selling, then it helps if you're likable or your product is likable. Next, change the narrative. Help ensures that this kind of work ensures that hate is not the dominant narrative, especially online where it becomes so negative. Share positive messages about love. This includes things like sharing values like tolerance, equity, and love online. People enjoy that kind of stuff too. It's not only an outrage machine. Calmly assist as you're able. If you see someone being bullied in a public place or attacked, then do what you can to disrupt it. Ask the person who's being targeted if they need help, and calmly ally with that person as much as you're able. If you're afraid to speak up or intervene, then pull out your phone and record what's happening, because this can often help the person after the event has occurred to make their case. Be the first to speak up. This is important for all of us to practice, because in social psychology, there's a certain spectator bias that happens where people look around them to see how other people are responding to try to get a sense of how they should respond. So when we're the first to speak up, it shows other people they should speak up too. Build up your courage. Work at building up your courage over time. Take small steps which lead to larger and larger steps. Do one thing to oppose hate, then another and another. Visualize yourself taking actions in situations where no one else is, so that if that type of situation presents itself, you're ready. Here's a story of someone who shifted away from a hate-filled mindset in their own words. And it took only a little courage from a lot of people to make it happen. This is the case of a man named Arno Michaelis, who was a neo-Nazi skinhead. He says, "I squandered 7 years of my life like that before leaving the hate group for good. It was a miserable time in my life that included 2 suicide attempts. The more hate consumed me, the more depressed I became. It wasn't animosity directed at him that convinced him that he was wrong to hate. Instead," he says, "the biggest driver of exhaustion that ultimately led me to leave the hate group was when people I claimed to hate treated me with kindness." He said, "People like the Jewish boss who said I was, quote, a good kid just going through a phase. Rather than fire me when I wore swastika patches to work, Black, Asian, and Latino co-workers treated him with benevolence when he least deserved it, but most needed it." He says, "Every time I received compassion from people who had absolutely no reason to show it to me, other than the faith that there was a good person underneath the swastikas, it blew my nonsensical ideology out of the water." Kindness, benevolence, compassion, and ultimately love. These were the key ingredients that helped steer Arno away from hate and towards love. Now, he says, love wins. Here's a great one for a church community. Hold what's called a unity rally. This is where you essentially give the media something positive to report on if there's a hate rally near your church. This also gives people a way to unite in solidarity away from the hate group. Hate groups love the opportunity to get violent, so don't give them the chance. Stay a safe distance away, like on your church campus, and hold an event in the name of love, connection, companionship, and solidarity. Invite all of the targeted groups to attend, and people who care about those groups. Make it fun and meaningful. Have guest speakers and raffles. Raise money for a worthy cause. Another great thing you can do is pressure leaders. This is something we all can do. Write and call government officials and encourage them to stand up for targeted groups. Some of them need to overcome fear of taking action, and others need to overcome their own biases. Have you ever heard of 5calls.org? Anybody here heard of 5calls.org? What you do, it's an app for your phone. And what you do is you set your location. You click on your cause that you're passionate about, that you want to call about. And it will tell you who to call in your zip code. And that maybe a state representative, that kind of thing. And it'll give you a short script to use when you call them. It's called 5 calls because they say that with their help, you can make 5 calls in 5 minutes. I've used it. I would say probably 5 calls in 10 minutes is more realistic, but it does work, and you feel like you did something to make an impact. Finally, just keep practicing love and kindness. Heed the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." If you'd like to review the highlights of this list, you can go to my blog, centuryofcompassion.org, or pick up a flyer in the entryway on your way out today. As we often say on our Facebook page, we've got to love the hate out of the world. Keep practicing love, and together we can create a more loving world and a brighter future for everyone. Amen.
Thank you, Matt. That was excellent.